Okay, welcome everyone here today. Magnificent Tuesday. Great to be here. First of all, disclaimer, members of the public are advised that recommendations to council contained within this agenda can be subject to alterations. Applications and other interested parties should refrain from taking any action until such time as written advice is received confirming council's decision with respect to any particular issue. Any statement or insinuation of approval regarding any planning or development application made during an ordinary council meeting is not to be taken as notice of approval from the Shire. The Shire advises that anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council regarding the application. An audio and or visual record will be made of these proceedings to assist in the taking of minutes. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures and to elders both past and present. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. Have an apology from Councillor Jackson and Councillor Boylan. Item 3, applications for leave of absence. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a leave of absence for the period the 20th of April to the 30th of April inclusive.
We have a move, Councillor Adams?
No,
you've got one as well.
No, I haven't. And I can't find it here. I did read it. Somewhere or other along the line here, I'm not recorded as asking for an apology for the agenda briefing, which I did. I sent it to you, asking to be noted as an apology. Somewhere in this lot, it says it just says nothing.
Councillor Adams, we can note that in the agenda briefing notes.
Good.
So we have Councillor Dickinson, you move. Do we have a second to Councillor Bromwell? All those in favour? Yep. Sorry. All those said no again. Okay, motion carried. Okay. Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is not always what we know or analyse before we make a decision that makes a good decision. It's what we do after we make the decision to implement and execute it that makes it a great decision.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interests. Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to declare a financial interest for item 12.1.2, the Bunbury Harvey Regional Council delegate. I am a deputy delegate on that and I get paid an attendance fee, so I shall leave the chambers when that's discussed. And also impartiality for 12.3.1, the proposed local development plan. I have a relative that lives on Laura Avenue adjacent to the development, so I declare impartiality but will stay in chambers and vote accordingly. Thank you.
Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mr. President. I declare an impartiality interest on item 8.2, account 114149. As the President of the Harvey Bowling Club, I will stay in chambers and vote on its merits.
Councillor Coleman, can I just confirm that that is item number 11, receipt of the Audit Committee meeting minutes?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I had 8.2 on page 53, was it? My apologies if I've got the wrong one.
We'll have to do it in order. Correct, thank you.
Okay, item 6. Sorry. Oh, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 12.2.1, an impartiality interest. I'm the current council delegate and board member of Morrissey Homestead, and I'll remain in the chambers and judge the item on its merits. Also for the receipt of the minutes, the audit committee minutes, an impartiality interest for Lot 208 Youth, as I am the chairperson and council delegate on that committee as well. Thank you.
Councillor Bromwich.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the audit committee minutes, I have an impartiality interest in the Lot 208 being a member of the board, and the bidding up Seawater Sports Club being the council delegate there.
Okay, no more. Item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice. It's nil. Item 7, public question times. Public question.
Thanks, Mr. President. At the last council meeting in Harvey, there was an item regarding the community meetings that are held annually or normally held annually. That was handballed somewhere. Where has it finished up, and will there be community meetings in the future?
At this stage, it was going through the advisory groups and also taking a different tact with the media side, is getting feedback through the Shire website. So it was decided just to trial that for 12 months and not hold the community meetings, and also have pop-ups in both Australind and Treendale and possibly Harvey to get feedback from ratepayers and other residents as a different way, and trial it for 12 months.
So how do you mean pop-up meetings?
Just a meet and greet in the shopping centres. So councillors and or staff and both can be at that location and get feedback, which have worked successfully in other ways that we've gathered the information. So I think, if my memory serves me correctly, I think at all the meetings there was about 163 attendances, and even on the market survey was just under 1,000. So it's just trialling a different way of getting some information and more feedback more broadly across the Shire.
Yeah, probably not getting the people that are interested enough in coming to a meeting. However, if that's the way things are going, yeah, I mean, I've been coming here a long time and things have changed. I get the impression that probably 13 councils was a waste of space. Everything that's done now could be done with 2 or 3. Everybody's sitting here rubber stamping things, my opinion. So, for what it's worth. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you after.
Okay. No more public questions. Move on to item 8, petitions, deputations and presentations. Nil. Item 9, announcements by presiding member or CEO without discussion, is nil. Item 10 is confirmation of minutes. And they're from the ordinary council meeting Tuesday 23rd of February 2021. Recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 23rd of Feb 2021 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. Councillor Coleman, I believe you have an amendment to make to that.
Yes, Mr. President. The minutes that I received suggest that we said that the minutes be accepted and adopted by council. However, on the day we erred and we accepted the minutes as a true and correct record, which I don't believe we can do if we weren't there. So I think we need to revert back to what was said in the meeting and then move an amendment to accept almost all of point 11 in the agenda, which is what would have been, which was our intent rather than what we said.
Okay. Councillor Bromman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to bring to your attention the Bushfire Advisory Committee meeting, and under the attendance it's got observer, it's got councillor, and it's got Mr. J. Bromman rather than councillor.
Councillor Bromman, we're just moving the first set of minutes, which is the ordinary council meeting. So Councillor Coleman's reference was to the acceptance of minutes which were part of those minutes of the ordinary council meeting. So I'll get to that one in a minute.
So do we have a seconder?
I'm not even quite sure I understood all that. And neither did my mate here.
Through the chair. So at the meeting, the 23rd of February, we received the BFAC minutes as a true and correct record. Now, not every councillor in the room was present at the BFAC meeting, so that it couldn't be a true and correct record. So we received them as that, but it needed to be changed for this council meeting to be received. However, the minutes that you've got on your table have already been amended, where we should be receiving the minutes as happened in the meeting, which were incorrect, but the correct way to receive the minutes.
Yeah, all right, I believe it.
Councillor Burgoyne.
Sorry, aren't we talking about the council minutes, the ordinary council meeting as a whole?
Through the chair, correct. So at the previous ordinary council meeting, we received the BFAC minutes incorrectly. The minutes that we've given to you for the OCM have that changed, which isn't actually what happened at the meeting. They were received incorrectly. So we still have to receive the minutes as it occurred, which was incorrect, but we've not noted that here. Yeah.
So we just need a seconder for...
Second, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Yep. Okay. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committees. Councillor Bromman, did you have...
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just the, as previously said, I'm put down as observer, councillor, and then you've got Mr. J. Bromman, and normally that's CR, so I believe, having looked at the other minutes as well.
You're quite right.
Yeah, just that correction? Okay, that's noted. So is there any questions, any discussion on the Local Emergency Management Committee from Monday the 14th of December? From the Local Emergency Management Committee from Monday the 8th of March 2021? Or the Bushfire Advisory Committee from Monday the 15th of February 2021? Any questions relating? Councillor Burgoyne.
I'll just draw council's attention to the scope of the committee. They've changed the meeting dates, the frequency of meetings. In lieu of those other two meetings, they're having a captain and FCO's meeting to get more of the nitty gritty out of the way, and then it doesn't impact on the actual BFAC meeting. So, good move.
Okay, so does someone prepared to move those three on block? Councillor Bromman, Councillor Burgoyne seconding. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. So about 11.1. Yep, so because it's absolute majority. Yep. Okay, so the Audit Committee meeting minutes from Tuesday 16th of March 2021. Is there any questions or queries relating from that meeting? So we have a mover, Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Simpson seconding. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. 11-0, absolute majority. Okay. Item 12, officers' reports. Item 12.1.1, Harvey Administration Centre Building Report. have officers' recommendation on page 11. Moved Councillor Burgoyne, second Councillor Dickinson. Any questions, any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.1.2. We'll wait for Councillor Dickinson to leave the room. Yep. So 12.1.2, Bunbury Harvey Regional Council Delegate. And the officer recommendation is on page 13. And we have received 2 nominations, one from Councillor Wendy Dickinson and one from Councillor John Bromham.
Do you want me to leave?
Probably don't, but maybe.
I'm quite happy to go outside.
Well, one's left, so probably might pay if you're happy with that to leave.
Yeah.
Councillor Bromham. Councillor Beach, did you want to? Yeah.
When are you gone?
Yeah. I think it's Councillor Beach.
I'll leave that off because I think you can hear it out there.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, it should be coming. Given that Councillor Dickinson is the deputy, I would move that Councillor Dickinson be the delegate and Councillor Drummond be the proxy.
Councillor Adams, second that? Okay. No, there's no more discussion. No more. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Councillors, the officer recommendation was that Council appoint Councillor Dickinson as delegate and Councillor Bromham as a proxy delegate to the Bunbury Harvey Regional Council. Carried 9-0. Okay, item 12.1.3, communication and engagement plan. The officer recommendation is on page 17. Move Councillor Lovett, second Councillor Bromham. Councillor Beach.
Wish to speak against, please?
Yep, is Councillor Lovett, do you wish to speak for the motion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to start off by congratulating staff on the comprehensive plan that's been presented. I think it speaks to the issues that have been raised in the feedback we've had from the community about not being aware of things that we're doing. We need this communication plan to provide a comprehensive way of communicating with the public in a whole range of forms. We've heard the statistics about people attending meetings versus people coming along to shopping centres and communicating via electronic means. I take on board the comment from the member of the public earlier about people attending meetings. It's not feasible with shift work and family life sometimes to be able to do that, but that doesn't mean those people shouldn't have a say. I'd like to congratulate staff on the preparation of the plan and believe that this is building on developments that have been made over a number of years. I'm sure that there's people here that can remember when the Shire didn't have a website, didn't use email and those sorts of things, and we rely so heavily on those means of communication. This is just a way of successfully bringing all of those elements together and communicating in a unified style with the community, and it can only benefit the community itself.
Second, I wish to speaker against the motion. Councillor Beach.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, councillors, for the opportunity to speak. And whilst I am speaking against the motion, I really did some soul searching, and even half an hour ago I wasn't sure what I was going to present to you, but I think I'd be unfaithful to myself or untrue to myself if I didn't. And I speak against the proposition, and it's not because I don't believe that we need to communicate and engage with our ratepayers. On the contrary, I believe that we should do more of it. I'm not totally sure whether we're best served by the plan. There was lots of elements into it, and we had a great presentation, and right at the very end, alarm bells started going off for me when it was suggested that we probably might need 4, I think it was 4 staff, might be 5. Last week, in an answer to a question in the agenda briefing, was regarding the resourcing of staff for the plan, and the answer was, and I quote, I don't think I need those, there are provisions in the 2021 budget under the proviso that if a Facebook page was activated, then a second person would need to be hired to manage this. Now, my back of the envelope calculations when I did this suggest the cost could be in the vicinity of about $100,000, which is with the on costs. And I saw an advert in the paper today. Now, whether that corporate and engagement officer that's being sought is for this or not, I don't know. But salary in the region of about 70 plus the on cost. So that's about 0.5% of rates. Now, most of you would know that when it comes to Facebook, I'm perhaps the leading dinosaur in this room, and I'm not going to use this session to dissuade anybody that that is the format that we need to go. But I would want to caution and suggest just be careful what you wish for. Facebook, or rather the contents of Facebook, have brought down some prominent people. The last one I read about was Councillor Sutherland, I think his name was, the Southwell, sorry, Shire President of Cable, who has resigned over the barrage of uncomplimentary dialogue that was received on Facebook. I've got a newspaper cutting here. Tasmania Council announced a resignation live on radio, saying the ongoing personal attacks on social media. The Mayor of Cambridge was served with a show cause notice by the local government minister, no doubt for voicing her concerns about local government on social media. So I know the argument about Facebook can be managed and those sorts of posts can be taken down. But once they're up there, you can't unsee what you have seen. So just repeating, be careful for what you wish for, and let's use the contents and communication plan as a guiding principle rather than something that's set in stone. And that's all I ask. And I'm not against the plan per se, I'm just against how it may be implemented in the future. Thank you.
Is there another speaker for the motion? Speaker against? Councillor Adams.
Yeah, not so much against the motion for what it's meant to do, but I certainly echo Councillor Beach's concerns about this social media. I think it's an avenue for evil, in all honesty. And I think for us to step too deeply into that, we're inviting all sorts of rubbish to be thrown at us like everything else on social media. What does concern me is at the moment, and obviously what this is supposed to address, but in just recent couple of weeks I've spoken to 2 very prominent business people in Harvey, lived in Harvey all their lives, worked in Harvey all their lives, got very successful business in Harvey all their lives, haven't got a clue about the hub and haven't got a clue about the $200,000 that we're going to spend on a consultant. Now,
on the board of Councillor Adams, we're discussing communication strategy.
Yeah, I'm addressing communication. These people don't know. What I'm going to say is that there is certainly a need for information to get out there, and I mean, you know, judging by today's paper, there is a definite need. But what concerns me is putting too much reliance on social media.
Another speaker for the motion. Councillor Bromham.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I moved a motion for the Shire to have Harvey provide its communication with a Facebook page, so they and the Shire could communicate more effectively, I did not visualise the far-reaching strategy that considers the growth of the Shire population and its diverse communities. A great outcome comes before us today, I believe. I would like to thank the consultants and staff, particularly Claymore, for their diligent work and the facts that underlie the conclusions drawn in this document, including our own community survey that asked for the items suggested in the communication and engagement plan. So I guess really if we vote against this, we're actually voting against our communities. It is a complex plan, I admit, as it should be in a Shire with our projected growth. It has both breadth and depth, providing avenues for engagement vertically and horizontally within the organisation itself and between the organisation and all those it represents in our diverse communities. It provides a multitude of communication avenues, some already used by a great majority of our citizens and visitors. And I think our visitors are there because it links strategically to our tourism plan. It provides the Shire of Harvey with an opportunity to lead others in the art of engagement and in meaningful collaboration that results in the communities providing valuable information and feedback on our major projects, social issues and future plans. It gives the people of our Shire a voice. It's funny because a lot of issues raised in the community survey have already started to be addressed by this council, a council that is thinking strategically, and I commend it for that. I therefore ask you to support this strategy as it meets the projected need of the Shire into the future while addressing the needs of the present. Now, just to reflect on some of the words by other councillors who have spoken against this thing, one said he wasn't sure, but he wanted to talk against it because he didn't know where we were going. Well, strategy tells us where we're going. He asked, whether the people really wanted this. And obviously in the community survey they told us quite resoundingly that they do. Maybe we need to think, not so much of what we have to fear, but more about what is good for our communities outside and how we engage with them effectively. I think this really gives us a really good opportunity, not only for now, but look to the future as well. And so thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Is there another speaker against the motion? Councillor Clooney.
This is going to be another cost to council. And it'll probably be a cost in the tune of 1 to 1.5% of rates. So you've got to ask, are you all worth it? Is it all worth it? If you think this is going to be good for the community, or the community are going to thank you for it, then think again, because they're going to chastise you every step of the way now. This is going to raise the temperature. This is going to raise the temperature of meeting, of our engagement with the community, because every time you put something on Facebook that you're going to do, and it might be something with the very best of intentions, you know, the new Harvey Community Hub, and you're going to have people attacking you because of the money you spent. It's the same when you build new Shire offices. Some of the people who are with you, the majority are vastly against you. And that's what it's going to do, raise the temperature. You just want to go engage the community more and do it. Pick up the Harvey Reporter today and see what happened the last time you engaged the community. They gave you an F. So, I don't know where you're going here, I don't know what you want to do. You just want to broadcast the meetings now, so it's all open to the public, which is all good, until there's a Clive Palmer and picks up on something one of you councillors says one day and decides to take you to court and sue you for defamation. Same like Christian Porter's now suing the ABC and the reporter that reported the article. And that's what's going to happen here. Someone will say something wrong one day, you're not protected by parliamentary privilege, and you'll end up in court and you'll have to defend yourself because the local government won't back you up. So I don't think it's a very good idea. Someone's going to have to man it. Someone's going to have to man Facebook, respond to the comments or delete the comments, whatever you want to do. And that, I think the system that we got at the moment where we engage the community on specific projects, whether it be Ridley Place or anything else we've done, was the best way to go. It was always specific to a project, and we went directly to the community and engaged them that way. By putting things out on media or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever we're going to do, Instagram or whatever, I think it's a recipe for disaster.
Is there another speaker for Councillor Dickinson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think there's probably a little bit of a grey area between council managing a website, a Facebook page, and councillors' personal Facebook pages. There's a difference. Yes, this is going to take staff time and resources, but we can get positive messages out there. I recall when the Yarloop fires were on, one of the main ways of communication then which was happening within the community was via social media. There was a lot of false information and there was not up-to-date information going around in the community. If the Shire had have had a Facebook page or similar at the time, there could have been the opportunity of getting correct information out in a very timely manner. And that's the reason why I would support this motion, is because we can get information out in a timely manner, especially in the case of emergencies and disasters. And I think that it would be a very good avenue for that. We all have to be mindful of what we say and do. We took that on when we became councillors, and we should be aware of that all the time. But I think that this is an avenue that is required, and I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Another speaker against? Speaker for Councillor? Councillor Coleman?
Thanks, Mr. President. Yeah, I'm going to speak. I had no intention of speaking, but I'll speak for the motion. I share regularly the Shire posts from Instagram to Facebook. When we put up about doing the mosquito treatment for Ross River virus, we had 1,200 hits on that, and people thanked us left, right and centre for informing them. Recently, we've put up other posts, and even recently one of our locals won an award, a state award, and we had 600 hits, and congratulations on that for those people. I have no illusions about the challenges of Facebook, and in fact a number of people have asked me why the Shire doesn't have a Facebook page when I'm constantly sharing official information from Instagram. And I explained to them that the responsibility and the challenges of having an organisational Facebook page is vastly different to having a personal one where I have total control. They understood that. They admitted that they hadn't thought of it that way before, but there is a huge responsibility on the Shire to impart information on a range of platforms, from us oldies and dinosaurs right through to the young ones. And you know, my 11-year-old granddaughters use iPhones and so on. They're growing up with it. So I think we have a big responsibility to meet all of the social media requirements and the communication requirements. And I have no doubt that it is a huge responsibility for our staff via this plan to be able to manage it properly. We have an obligation to our community to manage it properly. And often I take Councillor Carbone's points that it can bite you hard. But if we're on the front foot more often, and we're informing more often with the right tone, then I also take Councillor Adams' point that people will not be less informed. They will already know about it. And if they're debating it, whether they like it, accept it or reject it, they're informed. And I think that's the first step that we need to do. And we need to do that with the proper resources for our staff to be able to manage it professionally, responsibly, and all that goes with it. So I think by putting the Facebook out there responsibly, we're actually giving people the tools to have that debate. We don't have to like it. What we have to do is we have to address it, and then we have to address it in the right manner. And I think the plan addresses that with a number of staff and the professionalism that I suggest our CEO and others, Chloe and others, have as their skill set. The very first thing we have to do is communicate. The second thing we have to do is educate. So I'm very much in favour of it.
Will the Speaker against? Speaker for? Councillor Burgoyne.
This may come as a surprise that I'm speaking for this, but I speak for it. We do need a communications plan. I do have concerns though, and my concern revolves around the Facebook page for a couple of reasons. One, I've noticed I've got Facebook. I don't often post on there. My choice. That's fine, but I do monitor it. I'm using it for a lot of other groups. What I've noticed lately is that people don't Google things anymore. They Facebook it. What time's the local fish and chip shop open? What time's this happen? What time's that happen? Where's the local polling place? 3 posts in a row on the same group with several answers. The concern I have is for the staff member that's tasked with looking after that Facebook page. It's going to be a huge job, and at times psychologically hard for them, especially when there's an emergency on. So I have a lot of trepidation about the Facebook page. The rest of it I'm happy with and glad to see it going ahead. The dollars, well, dollars are going to be spent one way or another, but and I think the question was asked last week about being reviewed. I think we do need to review it over a time frame, because it may not work, but we won't know unless we give it a crack. But I just wanted to voice my concerns about the Facebook page.
Councillor Campbell and Councillor Simpson, you're all both happy? I would just like to put my support behind it. It's a bit like everything. There's pitfalls in anything in life, but I think things managed well and looked after by the right people. I think if we all sit here and believe in our vision statement of the Shire, together towards an even better lifestyle, then maybe we've got to communicate that, get it out there, and that's what we stand by. And I think there's a lot of people within the realms of the staff that have belief in that, and I'd like to think that councillors do too, and together we will make it happen through great communication and look after one another along the way and make sure there are no pitfalls. Councillor Lovett, right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've taken a few notes here as we've gone through. I think the part that we really need to be the most mindful of is the officer's recommendation is that we adopt the communications and engagement plan. We're not adopting a specific, the comments against this particular recommendation have drilled down into one fine detail of the plan. That is not the whole plan. The whole plan is to communicate. I take on board the comment about Councillor Southwell. I followed those posts, and let's just say that what you put out you will receive back. Need for information. The speakers that have spoken against this have actually stated that we need to put information out. Information needs to be formulated in a way that the community understand, and that we can have a sensible and informed dialogue between us and the community. That can only happen if we've got a strong communications and engagement plan, which we have if we pass this recommendation. So I would urge everybody to vote for it.
Okay, so I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? 2 against. The motion is carried. Okay, item 12.2.1, Christina Street Reserve proposed shade structure. We have Councillor Simpson has an alternative motion. I will read that out. That Council, one, as part of the development of the playground strategy, requests the Chief Executive Officer to investigate the most appropriate playground location and equipment requirements in consultation with Morrissey Homestead to meet their children's needs. And two, following the investigation, lists appropriate funding for consideration in the 2021-22 draft budget for the installation of shade sails and fencing if required to be installed prior to November 2021. So, second, Councillor Beach. Yep. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to certainly commend the officers for their recommendation. The intent of what was attempted to be achieved was a very positive one, and I can certainly why they were attempting to achieve it. The reason for my amendment, as I outlined in the discussion at the agenda briefing, is basically we're at the end of the season, so the opportunity for us to actually allow the Shire to progress their playground strategy to its conclusion is not going to adversely impact on the end of the season. It gives us the opportunity for further liaison with Morrissey Homestead to enable them to actually look beyond the Christina Street Reserve. And if it proves that the Christina Street Reserve is the most appropriate playground for them, then that's great. But let's give them the opportunity, because based on the report, it indicated, I believe, that the main criteria was related to a fenced playground. Well, if we review it and there is a more appropriate playground that's better suited to their needs in terms of equipment and what have you, then the opportunity for shade sails and also the installation of a fence is certainly there. So let's take the opportunity to just conclude the review, determine exactly what the needs are, and progress from there with the view that the children will still have playground with shade sails in place by November. Thank you.
Councillor Beach, do you anything to add?
Reserve the right, thank you, see how the argument goes. Thank
Is
you.
there any speaker against the motion?
Ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. President. Is that, perhaps through Mr. Lotzinger, is that the playground that has an accessible swing? I thought there was one that we had that had a swing that that was fully accessible.
Through the chair, and I suppose going back to the discussion we had at the concept forum, or the agenda briefing I should say, where Councillor Simpson did raise the issues about whether, as we're preparing the strategy at the moment, whether that particular playground is the most appropriate playground, whether the equipment is, currently, up to scratch, whether it needs to be upgraded as part of the strategy, and we are doing some inspections of playgrounds as we speak. So no, I don't believe it has got that accessible swing. I think the only reason this one was identified by Morrissey was that it is fenced. It has, not much use. It's, near the estuary, there's parking there, there's some toilets. So it sort of met their requirements. The only thing that's lacking was the shade. But with this, we can just consider that to see whether there are any other playgrounds that may be more fit for purpose, where we should look at shade and whatever. So yeah, this is supported by the officers.
Okay, so is there likely to be anyone against the motion? Councillor Burgon?
Just trying to get my head together here, but I just read through the letter, and it wasn't just the fence and the lack of shade that was mentioned in there. There's several references to the children. Where are we? Behavioural issues, where we access alternate playgrounds that become overcrowded during peak holiday times. High number of other children provide overstimulation for our clients. There was talk of sensory opportunities. That's probably the wrong word, but I can't find it. So therefore it's not just the shade, it's not just the fence. And by the look of it, they have actually looked around at other playgrounds. So I don't believe we need to change that recommendation at all. So I think I'd rather vote against this and vote for the other one.
Any other speakers for? Speakers against? Councillor Simpson. Right reply.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I certainly take on board Councillor Berglund's concerns, but I would just ask you to consider there is nothing that's going to be gained from installing the shade sails by the 30th of June, with the end of the season. If we adopt my alternate motion, it will enable us to just clarify exactly what Morrissey's requirements are, and if it's determined that the Christina Street Reserve is the most appropriate playground for the children's needs, then that's fine. We can go ahead and we can install it there. But let's give them the opportunity to at least revisit and look at other alternatives before we lock them into the Christina Street playground. Thanks.
Question, Councillor Brom.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you. I just wanted to clarify from staff in relation to if we delay this and we're then going to build it and decide we're going to build at Christina Street, would we be able to actually manage that prior to the summer season when the children would be requiring the show?
Yes, through the chair, yeah, it's the intent of the amendment to be installed prior to November, so prior to summer. So obviously we're going into autumn, winter.
You'd actually manage to get it on.
So once the budget's adopted, obviously we were looking at funding the officer recommendation through the budget review. This is looking at funding it through the budget process. But if all the ducks line up, is having that installed prior to summer, prior to this summer is coming up.
Yeah. Okay. So put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? One. Motion is carried. Two. Item 12.2.2, closure and post-closure management plan, Richardson Road landfill. We have an officer recommendation on page 24. Councillor Dickinson, moving, seconder. Councillor Campbell. Likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12.2.3, Clifton Road, Brunswick, proposed Ackroyd parking bay. Officer recommendation on page 27. Move Councillor Dickinson, second Councillor Berglund. Any questions, any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12.3.1, proposed local development plan. Officer recommendation is on page 33. Mover. Happy to move. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lullock, second. Any discussion, any questions? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? One. Motion is carried. Item 12.3.2, small business friendly local government. We have recommendation on page 37. Councillor Adams.
I'd most certainly recommend that we take this recommendation, Mr. President. Small business is really the heart and soul of any community. We should encourage it.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bromham. Likely to be any discussion against? All happy? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.4.1, financial statements as at 31st of January 2021. We have a recommendation on page 40. Councillor Simpson moving. Councillor Campbell. Any questions, any queries? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.4.2, listings of accounts paid January 2021. We have a recommendation on page 42. Councillor Bromham moving, Councillor Dickinson second. Any questions, any queries? Put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.4.3, Southern Aboriginal Corporation request for rates exemption. We have a recommendation on page 45. Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Bergman. Is there any questions, any queries, any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 13, elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given. Councillor Bromham.
Thank you, Mr. President. One-use plastics. I move this motion. One-use plastic is a major...
Sorry, Councillor Bromham, do we have a seconder?
Oh.
You're moving, Councillor Bromham. Second, Councillor Campbell. You're away, sir.
All right, away. Okay. One-use plastic is a major contaminator that finds its way into living organisms as it breaks down into microplastics, or if not biodegradable, accumulates in the environment, killing fauna on land, rivers and oceans. Other government organisations have already started to move to ban the use of these plastics, and the state government has said they will legislate to remove them from the marketplace in the coming 4 years. Of course, there may be uses for for these plastics for those that need to have these to fulfil a need of a physical handicap. Materials such as bamboo may be able to fill this gap while being compostable. I would like to commend Councillor Beach for his use of this material during the Harvey Anzac Day services in 2020. Is that right? Yeah.
Australia Day breakfast.
Australia Day breakfast, sorry.
Got one, so.
Yeah, he got it wrong. Okay, therefore I have moved this motion to comply with present public concerns that such materials has both long-term health and environmental impacts, the cost of which far outweigh the benefits of their use. I ask for your support in providing the CEO with the latitude to provide Council with a draft single-use plastics policy that will come to Council for ratification in April 21. Thank you.
Seconder, wish to speak? Question? Councillor Bergman?
Is that time frame realistic?
Councillor Birdwine, yes. For the draft policy, there are several or quite a few examples of local governments that have implemented similar policies. In regards to the implementation plan, that will require more work, but in regards to the policy, I've got an undertaking from officers that they can meet that time frame.
Any discussions? Any Councillor Adams?
As you're aware, I sit on the Keep Australia Beautiful Council, and for some time now we've been chasing banning plastics, and we've had some success with one-use plastic bags from Coles and Woolworths. So I'm certainly not against the principle, if you like, but we're being asked to do this in isolation, is that right?
Through you, Mr. President. Yeah, look, I don't think we have to be a follower all the time. I think as a council our job is to lead, and therefore I believe, you know, type of moving along this way sends a good indication to the state and other councils around us that we need to reduce our use of these plastics.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. As I say, I thoroughly support the idea, but it's going to be very, very difficult to do it in isolation. We have a state government policy, which, or what's it? Plan for plastics, and I think it would be far wiser, if you like, to go along with the state's plan for this banning of plastics or reducing of plastics. I don't believe it really is possible to do a great deal in isolation. There's so much plastic wrap and so on and so forth comes in from all over the world, and it really is it's bigger than the Shire as an individual, as an isolated Shire to do. So I mean, I'm going to vote against this because I believe we should be putting our faith in the state to introduce this plastic ban. I notice the use of the word biodegradable too, and that's a bit of a furphy, as we know. Biodegradable merely means make it down into little pieces. It doesn't mean to say that it's compostable. So yeah, that's the thing. I think we should put our faith in the state and put our weight behind their plan for plastics. Thank you.
Speaker for. Speaker against. Councillor Brom.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, thanks, Bill. I appreciate your point of view that these are huge issues, and I believe the state will lead eventually. However, I don't believe in waiting around for those types of things to happen. I think someone's got to be out there and start doing these things, and I think we can send a strong message to the state that we support this, and that just by putting a policy in place doesn't mean we're going to suddenly come cramming down on everyone who's using one-use plastics. But it certainly sets a direction, and I think that's what council is about, really.
Okay, I'll put motions. Anyone against the motion? One. Okay, motion's carried. Item 14, notice of motion for the following meeting is nil. Item 15, questions by members of which due notice has been given, nil. Item 16, reports of members is noted and in the big tin can. Does anyone have anything they would like to raise? Sure. Item 17, seal register. 17.1, officer recommendation on 48 and 49. Move Councillor Lovett, second Councillor Burgoyne. No discussion, I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 18, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of meeting. Nil. Item 19, matters behind closed doors is nil. 19.1, just in closing, even though we did get a F, and yeah, as President, that's probably not the first F I've achieved in my life, so I'll cop that one on the chin, but at least out of the 16 sections we didn't fail them all. So anyway, chin up, together towards a better lifestyle, and we'll all be happy. So we'll close the meeting and thank everyone for their attendance.